When we first walked in here this morning, and for a little bit after, the temple was quite empty. And I thought, well, that makes perfect sense, actually, because Christmas Eve, such an extraordinary event here. And I actually feel that this year it went to another dimension. I know we say that lightly every year, but all of us, we are growing spiritually. We are deepening. We are deepening our ties that make us family and connect us to God. So I think year after year, as we celebrate the birth of Christ, both as his birth and within, it does go deeper and it does feel more uplifted. So it was quite something. And then, of course, Christmas Day, when Christ is born. And we had so much leading up to that. In November, we started this year with a program on the Beatitudes, which was not just fun, but profound. And of course, the Beatitudes are the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, so it is the first time after Jesus started teaching where he felt that he could preach to the multitudes. So it's the whole sermon is profound, but he opens with the Beatitudes, and he encompasses everything that he wants to say to us in those teachings. And then in November, we had a 2-part series on St. Francis, also very inspiring. Francis was the first saint to ever receive the stigmata, so it speaks very clearly to who he was, that he could be so related to Christ's experience of joy and pain and everything, which he asked. He said to Christ, "Let me feel all of the joy that you felt and all of the pain that you felt." That took some courage, and he received the stigmata. So for 2 months, we've been building up to last week, and then we had our 8-hour meditation where I think for many of us, we're here for 8 hours asking. Steve read this so beautifully, really sharing the teaching with us by, I don't know how many times you had to read it to do that, Steve, but to emphasize what Swamiji was saying here. But when he says, look at the divine self that is the essence of who you are, your very self. You are that I. So Jesus is saying to us here, Jesus is saying, and then Swamiji expounds on it to make it so much more accessible for us. I've come to show you the way, the truth, and the life so that you can live according to your own divinity, that you too, all of us, can be the personification of these divine truths. And we sit in that 8-hour meditation praying that that will happen for us, that we will have that experience of Christ consciousness. That's what we're all doing there. And the 8 hours is just, the program is orchestrated so beautifully so that we can go deeper and deeper. It supports us to do that. And then, of course, Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day. the birth of Christ himself, and all that that means and holds and brings to us, which I'll come back to in a moment. But that is not the climax. This is not, today is not because I said to myself, I could see how people would feel this would be anticlimactic. We did Christmas. Christ is here. He came. That's it. And it's raining, and it's windy, and I'm tired. Or 3 of our staff members are gone, needing seclusion. It's not bad, all of the reasons why people don't come. But for those of us who are here, I want to say, this is the climax. This is not just not anticlimactic. What Christ is saying to us here, this is the climax of it all. We started the first week of the year. We start every year with the reading called The Infinite Christ. And in that reading, Swamiji shows us that the import of that reading is for us to see that we are not worshiping or trying to attune ourselves to Jesus the man, but that Jesus is the infinite Christ consciousness. And that's a beautiful reading. Just so happens next week, which would be week 1, is also Yogananda's birthday, which is another part of the beauty of this whole time. These 2 great saints, within less than 2 weeks, Christ is born and Yogananda is born. Very high spiritual time, a time that really allows us to go very deep and to feel their presence more than ever. So we have a special program for next week, and I don't know, we'll see what Sai Ganesh does with it. If he's even going to read that reading of the infinite Christ. But nonetheless, usually, every other year when it's not Yogananda's birthday, we start the year with that. And we end the year with this reading. So first we see Christ is not the man. He's an infinite consciousness. And then we come full circle till now at the end of the year. Jesus is telling us, and Swamiji is telling us, that's who we are. We're not who we think we are. We're not limited by all of the ways that the ego, the subconscious, I'd like to speak more about this in a minute, the Kundalini, which has us just held right here, which is down. We're not that. We're not that. Swamiji says, Jesus said, you are that I. You are that I. Every one of us. Jesus says here, no man cometh unto divine consciousness except by first recognizing his own intrinsic divinity hidden behind his delusive ego. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're praying for, our own intrinsic divinity. It's not just not egoic. We have to rid ourselves of the ego to even begin to start feeling it. Swamiji gave a talk, Swami Kriyananda, I think it was in the late 90s. I was watching it again yesterday and trying to figure out when it was. Pretty sure it was in the late 1990s. And it was called The Christmas Mystery. Now, we all know that, I want to get here because I want to read you the last line of that talk, that we sing this Christmas, this song that Swamiji wrote. Every year we sing it many times. It's an exquisite song. And the refrain says, "Who will tell to me this mystery, how a tiny babe in a manger laid could so many hearts to love persuade, this holy Son of Mary?" And Swamiji says in this talk, what was it about this baby? He said, or I heard somebody else say, I'm trying to remember now if it's in that talk, there were a lot of babies born that day, probably a lot of babies everywhere. But what about this baby? What is the mystery that he could still, 2024 years later, and I would say, and you would probably all agree with me, this will go on into infinity forever. So many hearts to love persuade. What was it about him? That's the mystery. But Swamiji says, not in this, not his last line of that talk, he says, "Let us all resolve to live more in God in this next year. Keep his consciousness with you all the time." That's just a beautiful line. Resolve to live more with God, in God. Keep his consciousness with you all the time. But when he's giving us, which I'll share with you in that talk, ways to do that, ways to live closer to God, he says the true mystery here, this is Swami Kriyananda speaking now, is why everyone doesn't go to that consciousness. Why everyone doesn't go to that consciousness. The baby came. The baby's very presence called people from all over many lands. They knew they had to get there. They looked into those eyes, and within an instant, they were in that place of ecstasy, of true divine love. What is that? And why wouldn't we all want it? Because Jesus says to us, you are that. What's the problem here? But I want to speak about this. This is not her talk, but in a way many years ago that I heard Ananda introduce this. She said, life is a battle against gravity all the way. Isn't that just a great way to hold it? Life is a battle against gravity. We all know what gravity does. Gravity holds us down. It's not all bad. It would be a little chaotic here were that not the case, but it keeps us down. Now, she's talking spiritually, or she was talking. I don't remember the whole talk, but she was talking about our subconscious minds. She was talking about Kundalini. She was talking about habits and attachments that keep us down, that say all the time to us, I don't want to change. I don't want to let go of what I have. I don't want to be more conscious, because being more conscious means letting go of the things that I love. And exactly what Swamiji is saying, what that baby was saying to us, is look up. You have to let your energy rise. You have to support it to rise. You can't let the subconscious mind keep running our lives, because it does. For all of us, it does, to a large degree. Of course, many of us are practicing meditation. We're practicing these teachings. This is what Christ meant when he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the way. Look at me. you will see that I am the way that you need to live. I will show you this. I will give you techniques. I will give you teachings. I am the truth. I am that divine consciousness that transcends all of who we are as humans. That is what truth is. Truth is that state of consciousness. I am truth, and I am the life. I will show you exactly how to live it. I am living it. I'm here, Christ said, not me. I'm on earth. Watch, I'm living with you. And what did he do? Every opportunity he had, he taught so many stories that we read about throughout the year, or that are in the Bible, even if they're not, in these teachings where he shows us. Swamiji in that talk again says, how is it that he walked into this temple? And it wasn't just that day that the money changers were there. They were there all the time. It was a custom. They had turned this temple into, you pay me, you pay this much, and you'll get into the temple. They charged people to come in. And Jesus walked in and he threw them out of the temple. What is that? They wouldn't have thought, oh, this man's asking us to leave, we'll go. They felt entitled to be there. But that was the power of righteousness, of pure righteousness, that they left. He was able to do that. When there was a woman who was being stoned to death because she had committed adultery. And in those days, old days, before Christ's time, he came. But before that, if a woman committed adultery, it was a law. She was to be stoned to death. And the disciples come up to him with stones in their hands. And they say to him, Master, what should we do? And he's just sitting there calmly. And he says, let that man who has not sinned cast the first stone. And it just stopped them. The power of compassion, of love. They all put their stones down. What I'm saying to you is, why was he different? Who was he? When he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. This is the life. He lived that life. He showed such, simply just spoke the truth with such compassion. Then he goes over to the woman who was sobbing and so upset and feeling so ashamed. And he says to her, go and sin no more. He didn't yell at her. He didn't make her feel worse. He didn't tell her how terrible she was. He just said, go and sin no more. He had all of this spiritual power that he was living to show us how to live it. He was the living Christ consciousness. And then says to us, that is who you are. But it's not simple. I'd like to share a story with you. A story from Greek mythology. The story of one of the stories of Hercules. I don't know that much about Greek mythology, so I had to look this up last night to learn. I don't remember it, all of the characters. But Hercules was many things in the world, but you may remember that he killed his family in a fit of rage. So in order to atone for that, make amendments for that, this is really like us living out our karma. It's amazing how similar the story is. There were 12 deeds that he had to do. One of them is that he had to kill Antaeus. And that was obviously not going to be easy. None of his challenges were. Antaeus was the son of Mother Earth, of the Earth goddess. So he was her son, so he received his power from the earth. He was also a giant. So he would, and he was not a nice man. So he would wrestle with people, and as soon as he could get them down to the ground, which he usually could, he would find his power and he would kill them. Then he would take their skulls, and as I said, he wasn't a nice man. That was a whole other story. Now, Hercules, on his way to ridding himself, this is not the language in Greek mythology, but it's true, of his karma. And this is us trying to live in perfect Christ consciousness. He has to kill the giant. So he watches him and he sees where his power is coming from. So when he goes to wrestle with him, the first thing Hercules does, Hercules is strong himself, is he lifts him up. He raises him up and therefore takes away all of his power, and then he can kill him, which he had to do, and this was a righteous killing. But it speaks, the whole myth speaks to us and what we need to do with all of those old habits, past karma, desires, attachments, all of the power that Kundalini has. We have to work just that hard to lift it up, because once we have lifted our energy up, once we break the hold that in each chakra has on us, which we do by the techniques that we're given, just like what Jesus was doing. It's all the same. Jesus was a perfect master. Yogananda is an avatar. They're teaching us the same thing. I am the way, the truth, and the life, and I have come, and I will keep coming, as Asha said sometime this week so beautifully. I think it was in her sermon last week, I'm not sure, but she was talking about Yogananda's poem, The Boatman. I will come again and again as long as one stray brother is waiting for me, waiting and wanting me, wanting to be free. Because Yogananda too is the way, the truth, and the life. So is Krishna and Buddha and every great teacher. This is what they came again and again and again to show us exactly what Swamiji wrote here. You are that I. Look at the divine self that is the essence of who you are, your very self. You are that I. This is what Swamiji is trying to show us in this reading. We're already that, and it will take Herculean effort. That's what it is. That's where that phrase comes from. We have to be like Hercules. Honestly, we have to be like Swami Kriyananda was. Swami Kriyananda he lived with us until not that many years ago, live in the flesh with many people all the time. He was so positive, so solution-oriented, so unwilling to do anything that he didn't think his master, Yogananda, would have wanted him to do. He lived every moment of his life in the presence of his guru, consciously, thoughtfully, saying to us in words and in deed, yes, this takes a lot of effort. It takes great strength, absolute willingness. But watch, that's what I'm doing. And you too can do it. And that is The essence of this reading and why I say it is the climax. We are that. We just need to bring our energy to it. We just need to do, as Swamiji said, live this year closer to God. He gave us just a few hints for doing that, and I want to share them with you. Watch the talk. You can just find it on YouTube. The Christmas Mystery, talk by Swami Kriyananda. He says, make every encounter in your life, Swamiji is saying this, as if you are talking to God in all people, all the time. Imagine that every time that you communicate with anybody. I'm speaking to God. I'm speaking to God. Wow, I'm speaking to God. Wherever we are, how would we talk to God? I think I've shared this story before, but I'll share it. I was leading a training that was going on, but I was away 1 week. And somebody else led the training, and then several people in the training, this is years ago, came to me and said, somebody really lost it last week when you weren't here. And they were saying horrible things about somebody else on the path here. So this is just in our community. They were meeting in Iris, the place that I live in, but I wasn't there. And they were swearing and using foul language about another member of our community. So I called that person to come and see me. I said, this is what I heard. Is that true? Yes, it's true, and I had every right to be saying that. And I said, well, first of all, just for beginners, we don't actually use that kind of language here. It was horrible. And I said, we don't use it for a reason, because energetically really draws you down. But besides that, we wouldn't speak about a guru by that way. Well, I did, and it's still accurate, and don't you tell me what I can do. And I didn't want to fight with him, but I said to him, let me ask you something. If Swami Kriyananda had been in the room that night, would you have spoken that way? Absolutely not, he said. I said, well, he was. He's always with us. Then I said to him, if Asha had been in the room, would you have spoken that way? Absolutely not. If I had been here last week, no, he said. I mean, really getting it. God is always with us. If it's true, the last verse of that Christmas mystery song, could it be that in this little one, Spirit's universal love did shine? If it's true, Swamiji wrote, he lives in you and me. And that's what's going on here. We are all a living Christ. We have to treat each other that way for our own sake. Then Swamiji says, feel as if it's God speaking through you. You're not speaking, God's speaking. What would Christ say? Christ would say, let he who has not sinned cast the first stone. Christ would say, go and sin no more with all the love in the world. That's what God would say. So many more examples, not always what we say, but if we follow what Swamiji said, let us be instruments for something higher than our own consciousness. Just think about that. We're living from our own consciousness. Not maybe the best all the time. Let us be instruments for a consciousness higher than our own. Very often when I'm not with patients as much now as I used to be, but still doing a lot of talking with people and counseling. Very often, honestly as often as I can remember, I wish it was all the time. Master, what should I say? Swamiji, what would you say right now? What would you say? What would your face be looking like right now if you were with this person? You tell me you speak as often as we can remember. Think always that we are a part of God, then He can drive our lives. Last thing, remember, we are a part of all that is. May the light of Christ, the infinite consciousness, shine upon you.
Let's take a moment and pause in brief meditation. And we'll have some music. What do you need? Sorry.
Okay, we're going to do an all sing of something that we sing during the festival, but you get to sing it with us and hear all the 4 parts from up here too. And if there's anyone out there who wants to jump up and join us, please do. It's Thy Light Within Us. And happy almost New Year.
To soul.